My alarm clock would pierce the quiet Boston dawn long before the sun even thought about rising, but I was usually already stirring, my body buzzing with a low hum of anticipation. My name is Jasmine, and I am 26 years old. Every morning, I would pull on my worn running shoes, shoes that had seen thousands of miles, and step out into the crisp, sometimes biting, air. The city was still asleep, a beautiful tapestry of hushed brick buildings and quiet cobblestone streets, and I felt like I owned it all, just for those early hours. Running wasn't just a hobby, it was the rhythm of my life, the language my body spoke fluently. I wasn't just running, I was chasing a dream, the kind that feels so big it almost hurts to hold onto it too tightly. I pictured myself on podiums, crossing finish lines, feeling the rush of victory, not just for myself, but for every sacrifice I'd made. During the day, I poured coffee and served pastries at a small cafe near Fenway Park, my mind often drifting back to the feeling of the wind in my hair, the burn in my lungs, the steady beat of my heart pushing me forward. It was a good job, flexible enough for my rigorous training schedule, but it barely covered rent for my tiny apartment, let alone all the other expenses that piled up. My biggest worry, the one that kept me awake long after my tired body begged for sleep, was my grandmother. She was the one who taught me to run, who cheered the loudest at my high school track meets, who believed in me even when I doubted myself. Now she was in a care facility, her mind fading, her body frail, and the medical bills were a towering mountain of paper I just couldn't seem to climb. A part of me, a small, scared voice inside my head, whispered, "Are you being selfish, Jasmine? Chasing a medal when your grandmother needs you so much? Should you just give up this dream and get a real job, a steady job, something that pays enough?" That doubt, that internal nemesis, was almost as exhausting as my longest runs. I pushed it down, focusing instead on the asphalt beneath my feet, the promise of a better future if I just kept going. I had to believe I was good enough, strong enough, for both of us. I tried to pick up more shifts at the cafe, but the extra hours on my feet left my legs heavy and tired, making my training runs feel like dragging myself through mud. I scoured job boards for something, anything, that paid more, but nothing fit my chaotic schedule of early morning runs and afternoon strength training. I entered every local 5-kilometer and 10-kilometer race I could find, hoping for a bit of prize money, but the amounts were usually so small they felt like drops in an ocean of debt. One week, I sprained my ankle during a speed workout. It wasn't a severe injury, but it meant days of rest, days I couldn't afford to lose. Every day I spent hobbling, unable to run, felt like a step backward, a betrayal of my own body. Then, a crushing letter arrived from the care facility. My grandmother's condition had worsened, requiring more specialized treatment, and the costs were astronomical, far beyond what I could ever hope to pay. I felt the familiar knot of dread tightening in my stomach. I even considered selling my most prized possession, a beautiful silver locket my grandmother had given me when I started running, etched with the words "Keep Going." The thought brought tears to my eyes. It felt like selling a piece of my soul. I pushed through the pain of my ankle, tried to train harder, pushing myself to the brink of exhaustion. I felt like a machine, but one that was constantly breaking down. I entered another race, a half marathon, hoping for a personal best, hoping for prize money. I ran my heart out, felt strong for most of it, but in the final miles, my old shin splints flared up, searing pain shooting through my leg with every step. I finished, but way off my pace, nowhere near the top finishers, no prize money in sight. Standing there, gasping for breath, sweat stinging my eyes, the crushing realization hit me: I was failing. Failing myself, failing my grandmother, failing my dream. Back in my tiny apartment, the silence felt heavy, suffocating. I stared at my worn running shoes, then at the stack of bills on my counter. My phone buzzed. It was the care facility again, another update, another request for more payment. I crumpled to the floor, the last shred of my fighting spirit draining out of me. What was I doing? This was insane. I couldn't keep this up. The dream felt like a childish fantasy, a luxury I couldn't afford. Maybe it was time to give up, to put my running shoes in the back of the closet, to find a full-time job, any job, even one that made my soul ache. The thought was a bitter pill, but it felt like the only choice left. I lay there for a long time, the weight of the world pressing down on me, tears silently streaming down my face, feeling utterly, completely, irrevocably broken. The Boston Marathon. I had somehow scraped together the entry fee, borrowing a little from a friend, telling myself this was it, my last shot. My leg still ached, my spirit still bruised, but I had to try. I stood at the starting line in Hopkinton, the familiar buzz of thousands of runners around me, the energy electric, but inside I felt hollow. My only goal was to finish, to prove to myself I wasn't a complete failure, and maybe, just maybe, find some peace. I ran mile after mile, the crowds cheering, the scenery changing from quiet towns to the bustling city. My body screamed, my mind wanted to quit 100 times, but I pushed through, thinking of my grandmother, thinking of the keep going locket. As I approached the final stretch, the iconic Boylston Street, the finish line arch visible in the distance, I saw something that made me pause. A few yards to my left, on a side street where a shorter charity run was finishing, a young boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, was struggling. He had visible braces on his legs and was using crutches, taking slow, deliberate steps, his face etched with exhaustion and frustration. He was one of the very last participants, far behind everyone else, and he looked up at the huge crowd, his eyes welling with tears, as if he wanted to give up. He stumbled slightly, and a wave of empathy washed over me, stronger than any pain in my own legs. I had pushed myself so hard for so long to get here, to finish, to earn my place. I was tired, hurt, and desperate for my own medal. But in that instant, seeing that boy, everything shifted. My personal struggle, my quest for glory, it all seemed to shrink. I crossed the finish line a minute later, not among the winners, but with a respectable time, and a volunteer immediately placed a beautiful bronze medal around my neck. It was heavy, cool against my skin, a symbol of everything I'd endured. For a fleeting second, I clutched it, the culmination of my dream. Then, without a second thought, I turned and walked directly towards the boy. He was still several yards from his own finish line, looking utterly defeated, his parents trying to encourage him from the side. I reached him, knelt down, and took the medal from my own neck. His eyes, wide and surprised, looked up at me. "Hey there, champ," I said, my voice hoarse from exertion but full of warmth. "You know, this medal isn't just for speed, it's for heart. And you, my friend, have more heart than anyone I've ever seen." I gently placed my bronze medal, the one I had worked for years to earn, around his neck. It was big on him, resting against his small chest. His eyes lit up, a brilliant, pure joy I had never seen before. He actually smiled, a wide, gap-toothed grin, and took another wobbly step forward. "Now go finish strong," I whispered, squeezing his shoulder. I watched him take those last few steps, propelled by an energy I had somehow helped ignite, crossing his own small finish line, beaming. It felt more meaningful than any victory I could have claimed for myself. What happened next was a blur. Someone in the crowd, a stranger, had filmed the entire exchange and posted it online. By that evening, my small act of kindness had gone viral. My phone started ringing constantly. News channels, running magazines, strangers from all over the world were sharing the video, sending messages of support, of gratitude. But the most incredible thing was the ripple effect. A small local running shoe company in Boston reached out. They were moved by my gesture, by my character, and offered to sponsor me. Not just with shoes and gear, but with a monthly stipend to cover my living expenses, and most importantly, a substantial contribution towards my grandmother's medical bills. It felt unreal, like a miracle I hadn't dared to dream of. I accepted, overwhelmed with gratitude, and suddenly, the crushing weight I had carried for so long began to lift. My new normal was still packed with training runs and hard work, but the constant financial stress was gone. I could visit my grandmother without guilt, and she, seeing me less worried, seemed to perk up, her eyes brighter. I ran faster now, not just for myself, but with a renewed sense of purpose, a lightness in my stride. I started volunteering at local youth running programs, especially those for children with disabilities, sharing my story and encouraging them to find their own inner strength. I helped launch a small fund with the shoe company, inspired by my own experience, to provide entry fees and equipment for underprivileged young athletes in Boston. One day, a small package arrived at my apartment. Inside was a hand-drawn picture of me, running with a medal around my neck, scribbled in crayon by a child. Attached was a note from the boy's parents, saying his spirit had been completely transformed, and he now believed he could do anything. He even asked his parents if he could start training for a real race next year. The note also included a small, polished stone, painted with the words "Keep Going" in tiny, careful letters. It was a replica of my grandmother's locket. I held the stone in my hand, feeling its smooth surface, and a profound realization washed over me. I had given away a bronze medal, something tangible, something I had fought for. But in return, I had received so much more: hope, purpose, community, and the knowledge that sometimes the greatest victory isn't found at the finish line, but in the moment you reach out to help someone else finish theirs. It truly was a twisted kind of fate, where giving away my prize had brought me everything I had ever truly needed, and then some.